Using the power of the internet, you can now watch GLC on any TV in the US, Canada, the UK, and Ireland with Roku. Basically, a box that connects to your television. Roku acts as a middleman between your internet connection and your television. So if you have internet service at your home, chances are high that you can watch all of the great GLC programming. And best of all, it's highly affordable too, with only a one-time fee ranging from $50 to $100. Log on to our website, www.glc.us.com, for details on how you can watch GLC via Roku.
Welcome to Update News. It is the Monday edition.
It feels like Monday. It really does. You know how Mondays just feel different than Fridays, for example.
That's because Friday, Shabbat's coming and you're going to get to maybe take a little break.
Monday, I'm just starting to count down. We got a ways to go.
Well, this has been a crazy Monday. It's been a crazy weekend with the news that are going on that's happening. It's just...
The articles that you've pulled.
It's absolutely insane.
There's so much.
And I didn't even fit some of the most important stuff in here, but it will hit on Wednesday, I promise. I'm bound and determined to get some of this stuff in here on Wednesday. So let's see, one announcement. Ginny had an emergency. Our bookstore, Ginny, she had an emergency today, and so she wasn't in the bookstore. We don't know if she'll be there tomorrow or not. So just be patient if you've placed an online order or you've been trying to call in. That's what's going on. We don't have anybody manning the bookstore today. So?
Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed that has been permeating the news lately has been the number of vacation days with the different presidents. And they're comparing Obama's days off as to like George Bush's days off and this and that. And I've been thinking, one thing is it's not so much the number of days that someone is gone, but what's actually going on.
While they're taking off.
Yeah, while they're on vacation. That's what's important. I don't know, that's just me. But as I was getting ready, here's a little update on my mother. She's doing very excellently well. She was reading along today, and she's sitting in the same room that I'm in, and she says, "Listen to this verse, Amy, and I'm going to share it with you." It's Psalm 29:4, and it says, "Through justice the king establishes the land, but he who stands aloof overthrows it." Just a little food for thought. Lars Enarsson is back in Sweden, and he did, as promised, send us his video. So here we go with that, and then we'll be back with you.
Shalom, I'm Lars Enarsson with the Watchman International. At the moment I am in Sweden, but I will continue to report on the situation in Israel because we need to continue to pray. Operation Protective Edge is not over. Tonight, midnight local Israeli time, Monday, August 18, the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel will expire. And things are hanging in the balance right now. Nobody knows what is going to happen after the ceasefire expires. On last Friday, it looked like both Hamas and Israel had agreed to the ceasefire proposal for a long-term truce between Israel and Hamas that Egypt had put forth in Cairo. However, yesterday, both Hamas and Israel rejected the proposal made by Egypt. We need to thank God because this is an answer to prayer. We have prayed that Israel will not make an agreement or a truce with Hamas, but that Hamas will be defeated. Hamas is a terrorist organization with an agenda not only to destroy Israel, but it is linked to a network of Islamic terror like Al-Qaeda, IS in Iraq, like Boko Haram in Nigeria, Al-Shabaab in Eastern Africa, and so forth. All of them with the same agenda to subjugate the entire world under the yoke of Islam. A victory for Hamas, even a truce where they are not defeated, will be sending a message of encouragement to this agenda to even increase their terror. So we must pray instead that terror will be defeated in Gaza, not only for the sake of Israel, but for the sake of the whole world, and especially for the Arabs in Gaza. 70% of them are tired of the terror regime of Hamas. They want to be free, and they have suffered tremendously. We know that hundreds have died digging the tunnels leading into Israel, including over 100 children. And many of those who dug these tunnels were in fact assassinated by Hamas after Israel launched the ground operation in Gaza, so that they would not be able to reveal to Israel the secrets of the tunnels. So this is a tyranny that is now in charge of Gaza, and we need to pray that the people will experience freedom in Gaza. Also, we're praying for the highway of revival between Egypt and Assyria that will go through Gaza, where eventually the Arabs and the Jews in the Middle East will serve God together and worship the Lord. So that is what we need to pray for now, friends. In order for that to happen, this militant Islamic fundamentalism that is now marching forward over the Middle East must be defeated. It's time, friends, that we begin to pray like John Knox prayed during the Reformation in Scotland, when the Queen of Scotland said, "I fear the prayers of John Knox more than the entire Armada of Spain." And likewise, during World War II, the intercessor Rhys Howells gathered his entire Bible school in Wales, and day after day they prayed through the entire war until the Nazis were defeated and the State of Israel was founded in 1948. In fact, Rhys Howells called it the greatest victory for the Holy Spirit in 2,000 years, when the State of Israel was founded in 1948. So because we also know that at that time there was a wave of revival that swept the world after 1948 as a result of the nation of Israel being established again. Now it is time for us to battle in prayer the militant Islamic agenda that Hamas is part of. And this is so important. We also need to remember when we pray here that the conflict this summer in Gaza has revealed that the greatest hindrance that Israel has had to defeat Hamas has been the Obama administration in Washington, D.C. President Obama has placed tremendous pressure on Israel to cease the war effort in Gaza. The White House has accused Israel in a very bad way, and they have even stopped deliveries of needed missiles to Israel during the conflict, which is unheard of to do that to an ally. So this is something we also need to pray, that Israel will have the power to withstand the pressures from the White House and do what is right at this time in history. Finally, let's remember to pray regarding the UN Commission that has now been established to try Israel for war crimes in Gaza. This is such a shame. The Israeli army, there is no army in the world that is doing more to protect innocent civilians than what they do, and Hamas should be tried instead for war crimes. This time, friends, let's not accept this sham. Let's pray that God will put an end to this effort by the UN. We know we have a God in heaven who is in charge and who answers prayer, And this time we need to pray through to victory. I encourage you to go to our website, thewatchman.org, and subscribe to the prayer lodge in the Elijah Prayer Army so that you can stand with us in the specific prayer points that we are giving out here. I'm Lars Enarsson with the Watchman International. Thank you for praying. Please continue. God bless you and shalom.
That was a really enlightening thing. You know, they're coming out with the things about the digging of those tunnels. And that is one of the things that I have for Wednesday, a letter that came out of there was smuggled out, but assassinating the people who dug the tunnels so that they couldn't tell the IDF, I guess, where they were. So, yeah.
Lars is doing a great job, by the way. His perspective is spot on.
Mm-hmm. Well, he has a son-in-law that is Israeli. Mm-hmm. So that's why.
Yeah. Okay, well, first and foremost, we have an exclusive report from Debka File. When negotiations for a durable Gaza truce resumed in Cairo yesterday, that would be Sunday, August 17th, the Egyptian and Palestinian Authority delegations slapped down an ultimatum for Hamas. Debka Files intelligence reports that Hamas was given the option of declaring a 1-month extension of the 5-day ceasefire, which runs out Monday at midnight, or else the announcement would be made from Ramallah on Monday in the name of the Palestinian National Unity Government. This was the first joint action taken by the triple bloc formed by Egyptian President el-Sisi, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas to push the Islamist Hamas-Islamic Jihad duo up against the wall.
Well, Mahmoud Abbas, who appeared to be sitting on the sidelines of the Gaza conflict during Israel's month-long military operation, finally threw in his lot with Sisi and Netanyahu when it came to the crunch. Their lineup, backed from the wings by Saudi King Abdullah and Russian President Vladimir Putin, set itself 5 objectives. Number 1, to confront Hamas with a solid political security front that is beyond its power to break. Number 2, to corner Hamas into accepting the Egyptian ceasefire proposition unchanged and unconditionally. Number 3, to compel Hamas to disarm. That is, dismantle its rockets and tunnels, thereby pulling the teeth of its military wing, Ezz Eddin al-Qassam. And number 4, to distance the Obama administration from the triple bloc's dealings with the Palestinian Islamist factions. And number 5, to keep the Europeans from interfering in those dealings.
Well, the proposition the 3 partners formulated together put Hamas and Jihad on the spot. The Arab world has abandoned them, and their only source of funding is Tehran. So their choices are grim. Face an escalated war that Israel will fight until the bitter end, or swallow hard and accept the only proposition on the table, which is tantamount to disarmament and capitulation. It appears that isolation is complete. The Egyptian, Israeli, and Palestinian leaders have managed to cut Hamas away from any backing in Washington, Qatar, and Turkey, as well as block its path to Moscow. To encourage Hamas to choose the right path, the Israeli Air Force is cruising around the clock over Hamas bases and command centers in the Gaza Strip, ready at a signal, to switch to the offensive if the Palestinian fundamentalists make the wrong choice in Cairo.
The quiet shaping of this 3-way alliance for resolving the Gaza conflict by means of a sustainable cessation of hostilities kept most of Israel's and world media guessing, says Debka File. In the interest of tight secrecy, Netanyahu and Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon chose to keep the rest of the cabinet in the dark as well, incurring loud complaints from ministers. The tone of address adopted by Netanyahu at Sunday's cabinet session was a pointer to the tough new mood prevailing in Jerusalem. Hamas is mistaken if it thinks it can come out of a military defeat with a diplomatic victory, or that we lack the resolve and endurance for a drawn-out conflict, he said.
And a little-known situation that happened over the weekend. The foreign ministers of Britain, France, Germany, and Italy, meeting in Brussels, offered on Friday to take charge of Gaza's border crossings and work to prevent illegal arms flows. On Saturday, Cairo, Jerusalem, and Ramallah politely informed Brussels that they preferred to handle this situation on their own and no European diplomatic or security assistance was needed.
I haven't seen that article anywhere else, but I pray that it's true. It's some really, really great news. Okay. This next article comes to us from Reuters, and we're moving over now to Syria. The Islamic State militant group has executed 700 members of a tribe in eastern Syria that it's been battling during the past 2 weeks. The majority of the victims are civilians, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said on Saturday. The observatory said reliable sources reported beheadings were used to execute many of the Al-Shita'at tribe, which is from Deir al-Zor province. The conflict between Islamic State and the Al-Shita'at tribe, which numbers around 70,000, flared after the militants took over 2 oil fields in July.
An activist in Deir al-Zor who spoke on condition of anonymity told Reuters that 300 men were executed in one day in the town of Granage, one of the 3 main towns of the Al-Shita'at tribal heartland, when Islamic State stormed the town earlier this week. Another opposition activist from Deir al-Zor said residents of Al-Shita'at towns had been given 3 days to leave. Civilians fleeing Al-Shita'at towns had either taken sanctuary in other villages or traveled to Iraq, he said. Reuters cannot independently verify reports from Syria due to security conditions and reporting restrictions.
The Sunni insurgents are tightening their grip in Syria, of which they now control roughly a third, mostly rural areas in the north and east. More than 170,000 people have been killed in Syria's civil war, which pits overwhelmingly Sunni Muslim rebels against President Bashar al-Assad, a member of the Shiite-derived Alawite minority, who is backed by Shiite militias from Iraq and Lebanon. The insurgency is split between competing factions in Syria, with the Sunni Islamic State emerging as the most powerful.
Tribal powers in Syria and Iraq have had to make the choice between either fighting Islamic State, IS, or pledging allegiance. In a video message from the head of the Al-Shita'at tribe, Sheikh Rafa Akla al-Raju, other tribes were called on to join them in the fight against the militants. We appeal to the other tribes to stand by us because it will be their turn next. If IS, Islamic State, are done with us, the other tribes will be targeted after Al-Shita'at. They are the next target, he said in the video posted on YouTube.
The IS group is able to gain support by providing food, electricity, and other necessities. The execution of thieves by IS in this very poor area is viewed as justice. On Friday, a video posted on YouTube showed men who said they were from 2 Al-Shita'at towns of pledging full support for Islamic State. A tribal member sitting in a room with dozens of other men said in a statement that was read out loud, "We say that what Islamic State stands for is justice."
Okay, we're going to turn our attention to Baghdad. This article comes to us from Reuters and AFP. On Friday, Islamic State IS insurgents massacred some 80 members of Iraq's Yazidi minority in Kocho, a small village near the northwestern town of Sinjar. A senior Kurdish official said jihadists took their revenge for international support on its inhabitants, who happened to be mostly Yazidis who did not flee their homes. Mohammed Shia al-Sudani said the Sunni militants had also buried alive some other victims, including women and children. Some 300 women were kidnapped as slaves, he added.
Yazidi parliamentarian Muhammad Khalid said he had spoken to villagers who had survived the attack. They said the killings took place during a 1-hour period. The resident of a nearby village said an Islamic State fighter from the same area gave him details of the bloodshed. He told me that the Islamic State had spent 5 days trying to persuade villagers to convert to Islam and that a long lecture was delivered about the subject today. He then said the men were gathered and shot dead. The women and girls were probably taken to Tal Afar because that's where the foreign fighters are.
Islamic State militants have killed at least 500 members of Iraq's Yazidi ethnic minority during their offensive in the north. Iraq's human rights minister told Reuters on Sunday. Amnesty International, which has been documenting mass abductions in the Sinjar area, says thousands of Yazidis have been kidnapped by IS since it's launched its offensive in the region on August 3rd. Members of the Christian, Turkmen, and other minorities have also been affected by the violence.
Well, on Friday, the European Union agreed to support member states' arming of Iraqi Kurdish fighters, whose military equipment dates back to the Soviet era. IS fighters are utilizing U.S.-made military equipment given to rebels fighting Syria's Assad, as well as equipment seized during their advance across Iraq and Syria. In New York, the UN Security Council unanimously adopted a resolution that, quote, calls on all member states to take national measures to suppress the flow of foreign terrorist fighters. And what that means is don't let people go from your country over there to fight alongside them, as so many did in Syria.
Exactly. Okay, we're going to focus our attention now on Liberia. This comes to us from the AFP and the AP. Liberian officials fear Ebola could soon spread through the capital's largest slum after residents raided a quarantine center for suspected patients and took items including bloody sheets and mattresses. Can you believe this? The violence in the West Point slum occurred late Saturday and was led by residents angry that patients were brought to the holding center from other parts of Monrovia, Tolbert Nanswa, Assistant Health Minister, said on Sunday. West Point residents went on a looting spree, stealing items from the clinic that were likely infected, said a senior police official who insisted on anonymity because he was not authorized to brief the press yet. The residents took medical equipment and mattresses and sheets that had blood stains, he said. Ebola is spread through bodily fluids, including blood, vomit, feces, and even sweat.
The head of the Health Workers Association of Liberia, George Williams, said the unit housed 29 patients who had all tested positive for Ebola and were receiving preliminary treatment before being taken to a hospital. Of the 29 patients, 17 fled last night after the assault. 9 died 4 days ago, and 3 others were yesterday taken by force by their relatives from the center, he said. Doctors and nurses are not only fighting the disease, but a deep mistrust in communities, often in the thrall of wild rumors that the virus was invented by the West or is just a complete hoax. Residents had opposed the creation of the quarantine center set up by health authorities in a part of the capital seen as an epicenter of the Ebola outbreak. We told them not to build their camp here. They didn't listen to us, said a young resident who declined to give his name. This Ebola business, we don't believe it.
Well, last month, thousands tried to storm the main Ebola hospital in the eastern city of Kanima, threatening to burn it down and remove patients. The local police chief said the panic was caused by a former nurse who reportedly told people in the nearby fish market that Ebola was a pretense for carrying out cannibalistic rituals. Some 1,500 police and soldiers have been deployed in the worst-hit areas of Sierra Leone to prevent raids, but they are powerless in the face of the suspicion and fear of poorly educated traditional communities. Health workers pleased that relatives stop bathing the dead, who are highly contagious, have also increased suspicions, as many in traditional communities see ritual washing as a way of honoring the departed.
Neighboring Sierra Leone has also battled to get patients to comply with quarantine measures as myths spread about the virus. Folk cures for the disease have proliferated. In Nigeria, 2 people died and some 20 were hospitalized after they ingested an excessive amount of salt, believing it could prevent Ebola. There have also been reports in Liberia of people drinking chlorine in the hope that it will keep the disease at bay. The Ebola outbreak, the worst since the virus first appeared in 1976, has killed more than 1,100 people in West Africa and could last another 6 months, the Doctors Without Borders charity group said on Friday. One aid worker acknowledged that the true death toll is still unknown. New figures released by the World Health Organization show that Liberia has recorded more Ebola deaths than any of the other affected countries.
Tornu Kabar, who works for the aid group Plan International in northern Liberia, said response teams simply aren't able to document all the erupting Ebola cases. Many of the sick are still being hid at home by their relatives, who are too fearful of going to an Ebola treatment center. Others are being buried before the teams can get to the remote areas, he said. The task is made harder by the shortage of treatment facilities. Beds in such centers are filling up faster than they can be provided, evidence that the outbreak in West Africa is far more severe than the numbers show, said Gregory Hartle, a spokesman for WHO in Geneva. There are 40 beds at one treatment center the Doctors Without Borders recently took over in one quarantine county in Liberia. But 137 people have flocked there, packing the hallways until they can be sorted into those who are infected and those who are not, said Joan Liu, the group's international president. The death toll is now 1,145 people in 4 countries across West Africa, according to figures released Friday by the World Health Organization. At least 2,127 cases have been reported in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Nigeria. Sierra Leone's president, Ernest Bai Koroma, told journalists Friday that the country has lost 2 doctors and 32 nurses to Ebola.
Wow. And now we're going to move over to Britain with an article from the AFP. Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron said on Sunday that Islamic State fighters sweeping across Syria and Iraq are a direct threat to Britain, and the country must use all tools available to halt their advance. Cameron said that while it would not be right to send an army into Iraq, some degree of military involvement was justified due to the threat that an expanding terrorist state would pose to Europe and its allies. If we do not act to stem the onslaught of this exceptionally dangerous terrorist movement, it will only grow stronger until it can target us on the streets of Britain, Cameron wrote in the Sunday Telegraph. His comments came after the Church of England slammed the government for not having a coherent or comprehensive approach to Islamic extremism in a letter in the Observer newspaper.
British authorities are particularly concerned about fighters traveling from the country to join extremist causes in the Middle East, fearing they could be a danger if they return to Britain. Politician Nadhim Zahawi, a conservative member of parliament who is a Kurdish Iraqi descent, said following a trip to the region that between 500 and 750 fighters had joined the Islamic State from Britain. A senior Kurdish leader reported to me that one dead jihadi was found with a Liverpool FC membership card in his wallet, he wrote in the Mail on Sunday. PM Prime Minister Cameron said that the fight against the extremists would also take place in Britain, and anyone who tried to recruit people to the movement or flew the black flag of Islamic State would be arrested. The government has removed 28,000 pieces of terrorist-related material from the internet, including 46 videos related to IS.
28,000 pieces. Okay, one more before we leave you today. And it happens right here in the U.S. in good old California. It comes from The Guardian. A group of activists returned to the port of Oakland in California for a second day on Sunday to picket outside dock entrances in an effort to prevent an Israeli ship from unloading its cargo in protest of recent violence in Gaza. The ship, the Zim Piraeus, had come into port earlier that day and was waiting to unload, but dock workers reporting for the ship did not dare cross those picket lines, which created further delay. Protesters had set out to stage early morning pickets on Saturday as part of an action dubbed Block the Boat for Gaza, organized by a Bay Area coalition that included some 70 organizations. While the Saturday march and rally drew a large crowd to the port, the blockade didn't go forward since the vessel remained out at sea. Organizer Laura Kiswani, who said she was in contact with members of the Workers' Union, International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 10, said, "Our intention is to really build a movement here. Our goal in the long run is for the workers themselves to refuse to unload that ship, stand with us, and take a position against Israeli apartheid." Give me a break.
Wow.
Hey, we love you, and we will see you back here on Wednesday. Remember, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.